Hey everyone, thanks for watching. We're here at 24th and Market Streets in Philadelphia outside the Aramark building. Aramark is one of several companies that people are protesting today. Basically, they make a lot of money by providing privatized, extremely overpriced services like food and video communications to prisoners in the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. The Pennsylvania DOC recently basically privatized like all the services that prisoners in their custody rely on. It's a pretty exploitative arrangement, so people are here calling attention to that. Aramark is one of the companies in this building here at 2400 Market. So there should be some speakers and stuff in just a moment.
Good afternoon, everybody. Tell me if you can hear me. Yes. Okay. My name's Cindy. I'm from Food Not Bomb Solidarity, and we planned this action with the hosting of other Philadelphia groups as well. There's Workers' World is represented here. The Human Rights Coalition is represented here. Jericho Movement is represented here. Mobilization for Mumia is represented here. This action was planned by incarcerated people behind the walls. That's the first thing I want to make clear. We are their voice. We're putting this action out for them. Like they can't be here. But we're putting this action out for them. So, you know, we just need to remember that this was designed by people behind the walls. And in fact, I have a statement from one of these people. My name is Jerome Coffey. I am currently incarcerated at State Correctional Institution Pine Grove, located in Indiana County, Pennsylvania, serving a life sentence. An unjust life sentence, if I can say so myself. In a nutshell, in August of 2018, Pennsylvania Department of Corrections Secretary John Wetzel signed a contract with Smart Communications to process prisoners' personal mail as a result of contraband, so-called, being introduced through the postal system. In reality, the postal system was one of the last profitable infrastructures that was up for sale still by the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. And I'll get onto that later, but pretty much every different entity has been privatized. And this mail service was one of the last ones to go. In the last 3 years, Smart Communications Service has been a complete failure and is incompetent. In delivering prisoners' personal mail. Furthermore, Smart Communications is using counterintelligence by digitally storing prisoners' personal information in a database. Meanwhile, Secretary Wetzel is retiring in October of 2021 after serving as head of Pennsylvania's Department of Corrections for a decade. and Smart Communications is renegotiating a contract with the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. Let me read that again. Smart Communications is renegotiating $15.8 million taxpayer money, is renegotiating a contract with the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. In closing, Pennsylvania Department of Corrections doesn't need Smart Communications. Pennsylvania Department of Corrections needs a common sense approach, not a profitable approach, to solve the mail service. Stop Secretary Wetzel from renegotiating this contract because it's all about profit. In struggle, Jerome Coffey. With a quote from Dr. Amos Wilson, and that is, if you want to understand any problem in America, you need to focus on who profits from that problem, not who suffers from that problem. And so we're going to be talking about the 8 corporations, organizations that profit from the suffering of our loved ones behind bars. Also, I would like to say a quote as well from Assata Shakur. Nobody in this world ever got their freedom by appealing to the moral sense of people who were oppressing them. So the time has come to expose these corporations. We call this, it's subtitled, Follow the Money. Follow the money. The prison profiteers are making money off the backs of our incarcerated loved ones and their families. I'll quickly go through the different corporations and give you a little. All this information, or a lot of this information, has been submerged. It happens in the dark. It happens in secrets. There's all kinds of non-disclosure agreements. If you go to do research, you can't find out a lot of the facts. And a lot of these corporations are interlinked. And one corporation is the parent company of another one, and it's and the DOC has signed non-disclosure agreements with them as well. And I also want to say that, and this is helpful to the DOC, if they ever get sued for, in relation to any of these corporations, they don't have to call out their own lawyers and take their time to fight a lawsuit. They just call on the corporation who was in charge, who was named in the suit, and this takes more work and more money that they don't have to put forth. So the first one, and like I said, a lot of these corporations are also owned and partnered with other corporations, but this is the general gist of it, that most people don't know, and we're exposing this. The first one is, and we're standing right outside of the headquarters of Aramark. When the DOC first had bidding as to who was going to get the contract to supply the food, Aramark came in at 99 cents a meal to feed the incarcerated people. 99 cents a meal. The food is mostly carbs. It's crappy. And in fact, if anybody wants to see it, I have smuggled out copies of menus in my bag if anybody wants to see them. It's like soy, a lot of soy, a lot of pasta, a lot of bread, cake, cheap cake, a lot of carbs, very little vegetables, of course, or fruits, anything fresh. Kool-Aid, you know, rather than like good, clear water. And actually there was somebody that was going to speak, but that's a whole other thing, on the quality of the water and the food and the air in prisons. But that's a whole other thing. We're just talking about this now. Okay. So the phone service is mostly handled by GTL, and that's the sign that our good friend Santua is holding, GTL, which stands for Global Link Technologies. And they have about 50% of the business of phone calls. And so-called incarcerated people get 15 minutes, and you're broken in on usually about twice during a phone call, saying that this phone call is being recorded. And all the data, and this was Jerome talked about this, all the data is stored in a database. So whatever you say, when you're making a phone call, it all gets stored in a database. And I'm not quite sure what's the length of time that they keep this all. But and I'm talking about Pennsylvania, obviously. I don't know what's going on in Wyoming prisons, or, you know, but this is Pennsylvania. Let's see. The next one that I want to mention, okay, so I mentioned Aramark. And I just forgot to tell you one thing. We have a comrade who works with us, Noel Hanrahan, who's also doing a lot of research on the quality of food. And the conclusion that we came to is 99 cents a meal. They for their cheapness, that's why they went for it. And Noel goes even further. She says that certain inmates are being targeted, certain incarcerated people are being targeted, that they are being served purposely, that even though it's mandated that they're supposed to receive this and that in their diet, that they're not getting it. And that slowly, they're getting ill from it, and, you know, it's death. They're trying to kill these people. The next one I had was the medical services. Now, the medical services, we've done back research on the contracts, and what usually is, I think, very difficult to figure it all out, because it's all non-disclosure agreements and it's all confidentiality. But it was once, let me see, Horizon, then it went to Wexford, and now it's Wellpath. And it's the same company, it's just with different names to it. I got to tell you that all the health personnel that are hired are by the hour. In other words, the more people you can see, do you know what I mean? If everybody gets 5 minutes, you can see 12 in an hour. So nobody can really talk about what's going on with them, what's bothering them. At this point now, they have made medical visits free. Yes, they're free. They used to be $5. To see a doctor was $5. And if you're making 19 cents an hour, to save up $5 to go to a doctor. But anyway, medical visits are now free. However, medication, you have to pay for that. And the medication mostly consists of Tylenol. I mean, you could be having anything wrong with you. Here, take these Tylenol. $5. I don't know how many you get. 10? A little bottle? I don't even know how many you get. $5. And our comrade, Russell Maroon Schultz, if you've ever been to, in the olden days when they let outsiders more into the SCIs, you would see all the incarcerated people lined up for their meds, like at 7 o'clock at night or whatever. And you know, they knock them out, make them, you know, so that they don't have to, they're easier to control. Maroon always refused to take it. He called it a psychotropic billy club. It's the same thing as knocking a person over their head, knocking them unconscious. is giving them like, free Haldol. It makes them unconscious. The next one that I wanted to talk about is smart communications. Where's my smart communications? My smart communications people. Now, this is a kind of a long story, and I might be preaching to the choir. A lot of people might know it. But in August 2018, and I'm just going to say what I think, a so-called wrongly, it wasn't true, a false scare came through the prisons. I think there were 3 in particular that were like targeted. And the people that opened the mail, because even when you sent mail, it was still opened and read. The people that opened the mail said there were substances inside the envelopes and they were getting sick. So, real quick, and it's a whole long story about how this has been disproven, but nevertheless, real quick, in 5 days, they signed this contract with Smart Communications. A no-bid contract. It was all ready to go. How did they know that they were going to need something all ready to go with 5 days notice? How about that? Like, maybe it was planned before it happened? Anyway, so if anybody's ever written to any people that were incarcerated, okay, you have to send your letter down to Florida. And you're like, wait a minute, like, Mumia's in Monoy, SCI Monoy. Why do I have to send a letter to Florida? It goes down to Florida, it gets scanned, it's put in the database, and the new, just came out about a week ago. It's now the link, it's transformed, it's scanned and transformed into a link. And then the link is sent to the each individual SCI, and they print them out there, and that's how they get their mail. So any letter that you have written personally, they're just going to get a copy of it. Same thing to do with photographs. And actually, that brings me right to my next thing, because it takes so long for even this stupid, Xeroxed copy to get there. Many have turned to tablets to use email to get in touch with people. And email is, my research has come up with Global Telelink. Not only does phones, but does email as well. And if you correspond to people in Pennsylvania, it's called Direct Network Connect. That's but GTL is the parent company. Every time you send a letter, or they send a letter back to you, it's 25 cents. Okay. The price of tablets, and this is at this point in our technology, you can buy a tablet for like $65, right? But they must buy them from the commissary, where they are $147. And they're very undependable. And in other words, they can't just keep this tablet in their cell. They must go out into the common area and plug it into, to get internet service. They must plug it into a kiosk in the main area there, which, if they're locked down, they're like shit out of luck. So anyway, that is the email service. There's a group, and I thank Betsy for this research. The Keefe Group runs, and also another group, I don't know how active they are in Pennsylvania prisons, the Access Corporation. And sometimes even Aramark runs the commissary and foods in the commissary. Now, because the food that is served is so woefully lacking, and like people with an appetite, for 99 cents, you should see some of these menus that I have. You get like a glass of juice, a piece of toast, like 1 egg. And like that's supposed to keep you until lunch. Anyway, so people buy a lot of stuff from the commissary. And where do they get the money to buy stuff from the commissary? From working in this SCI. So I don't know if you've ever heard the theory about the company store. Like you make the money from them, and then you spend your money in their store. The next one I have, and I want to tell a little personal story. I've told this one before. Food Not Bomb Solidarity, which is one of the sponsors of this event, has a member that's incarcerated and needed a new TV. CERT teams, guards, CERT is it's a team of specialists that come in and raid the cells, and sometimes they destroy stuff and they intimidate people and beat them up, etc. Anyway, his TV got destroyed. He needed a new TV. So out here, you know, what's the cost of a TV? Like, I mean, this was like a small, I don't know if it was black and white, or it was like a little like an $80 TV. He had to buy it from the commissary. You cannot get anybody to send it in to you. You cannot, you know what I mean? You can't mail order it or something like that. You have to buy it from the commissary. And it was like $162 or something. So Food Not Bomb sent him the money, and he got that. But, and the last one I just wanted to mention is and I don't even see anybody holding it. All right, oh, there it is. Benko's holding it. It's a company called Polycom, and they do the video visits. It's also known as Polycom Real Desk Presence. Now, during this whole COVID disaster, real visits, contact visits were cut off, and so to make up for that, they instituted more video visits. And at first, it was working just fine. They were using Zoom. But then, after a couple months, they negotiated. Zoom refused to give over the recordings of the calls. However, Polycom would. So now Polycom has that contract. So there is no thing, no entity in SCIs, in prisons in Pennsylvania that is not privatized. And what they call commission is really kickback. That the DOC is not getting kickbacks from almost everyone. Yeah, I should have written this down, but hold on for 1 second. This is some of the stuff that I found out about smart communications. Smart communications pitched an idea to the prisons in Virginia. Thank God it was not accepted. But this was the proposition that investigators will have access to the postal mail sender's email address, physical address, IP address, mobile phone number, GEO, GPS location tracking, and the exact devices used when accessing the system, and any related accounts the sender may also make or use. In other words, a lot of this stuff, even though it's small at this moment, some of these it's small, maybe only 1 or 2 prisons, it opens the door for other ones to be signing on, or for when these companies pitch their services, they can point to Pennsylvania and say, hey, we did it in Pennsylvania and it worked out just fine. So I wanted to bring that one up, and I also wanted to bring up I really can't find it now. But anyway, so just remember that the main two that we're really talking about here is Aramark, and there you go, the Aramark sign is Aramark and their crappy quality meals and services to the DOC's FCI, Pennsylvania prisons, and also smart communications, because their contract will be up at the end of this month. And they got $15.8 million before for 3 years, and this is taxpayer money, this is your money, and it's coming up again, and we don't want to see it happen. We don't want to see it happen. So that's it for me. Does anybody else care? Now, Saudi? Who keeps us safe? This is Saudi, and she's representing HRC, that's the Human Rights Coalition, and the Abolitionist Law Center, and the Philly Jericho movement. Give it up for Saudi.
Peace, everyone. Hey. So I'm here, like Cindy Lou said, representing the Human Rights Coalition and ALC. We've been in Philadelphia since 2001, bringing together families, community members, and formerly incarcerated people together to build a movement to understand that prisons are the largest and the worst sites of state violence that we see in America. We get stories and letters every single week from people on the inside, people sharing stories of being spit at and punched by COs, people being told that if they want to have their phone privileges, they need to fight each other as entertainment for COs, people who have been on suicide watch, who've been sprayed with pepper spray, thrown in the hole. We hear constant stories of trauma and abuse by prisons, and this narrative defending these sites as if they're supposed to keep us safe. We understand that when we look at prisons and police and COs, that they're the modern day plantation owners and runners. All they're doing is taking people who are oppressed, people who are poor, people who are marginalized, people who don't have access to housing or funding or health care. They're taking them and disappearing them into human warehouses where they can experiment on them with different tactics for control and punishment and surveillance. I want to read a letter that we received from a hunger striker a few months ago who him, along with 13 other people, maybe as many as 30, had to literally deny themselves food in order to get attention for the level of trauma that they were experiencing. This person says, this is my recap of what solitary confinement is like. There were 3 suicides inside. One was my neighbor. 5 suicide attempts. Dozens sent to suicide watch for verbally expressing thoughts of killing themselves. 1 hospitalized on 2 occasions for sticking pens and going crazy, cutting their wrists with razors, spearing feces on the cell walls. Some chose to go to recreational cages to throw it on others while handcuffed. Many were assaulted by guards and sprayed with chemical agents. The amount of times that our food, recreation, and showers were denied as a means of punishment, torture, and retaliation was countless. There's no upside to solitary or to prisons. We're constantly left powerless and harmed. I'm gonna read another letter. This person says, today is Friday, which marks the 10th day that myself and 11 other prisoners have starved ourselves in an attempt to bring change and awareness to these torturous conditions behind the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections. I am being housed in SCI Phoenix in what is called the IMU, which is an intensive management unit, a unit that doesn't even exist. The PADOC gets funding for this program, but has no policy for how this program operates or what the purpose of it is. Myself and 8 other prisoners were transferred here from the Delaware DOC under what is called an interstate compact agreement. In Delaware, long-term solitary has already been abolished and is considered cruel and unusual punishment by the courts. Despite this fact, the PADOC signed a legally binding contract stating, and they quote, faithfully execute this sentence in orders of the committing court of the sending state, which means that because those of us that are here from Delaware are being housed in long-term solitary, it has violated that legally binding agreement. The PADOC has continuously manipulated the system at the expense of human beings and will continue to do so until otherwise made to stop. Today, in the very unit that I am in, a man took his life. We hope that this hunger strike will shed light to the inhumane conditions and treatments of all the fathers, brothers, uncles, and sons that are being warehoused and tortured with me. I just want to uplift how horrific it is that people who are sent somewhere to serve a quote-unquote punishment are being forced and denied the exact livelihood that they deserve as human beings. We're a state and a country that is obsessed with inflicting cruelty and torture on people. We're obsessed with violence. We're obsessed with state authority that makes it legally acceptable to be violent and then turns around and criticizes communities who then also produce that violence. When we look at these companies who benefit off of this, Aramark, Polycom, Victoria's Secret, McDonald's, Wendy's, all these companies make money off of people's pain, off of poor people's pain, off of black people's pain, on undocumented people's pain. It's not too difficult to look at the kind of society that we're in now and to see it so clearly exact to the slave system and the caste system. We may have more things to distract us like TV shows or cell phones or whatever we see in front of us that makes us feel comfortable. But in reality, we stay the same exact system, eating the poor, eating the uneducated, eating those who have been divested from. And it's our jobs as a community to either use the privileges that we have or the resources that we have to constantly criticize these companies that exist from our labor, who have millions to their access while we're the ones struggling to have good school systems, good healthcare systems. We're struggling to have parks, clean parks. I want to read another letter from a hunger striker just to lift up the voices of those on the inside. This hunger striker shared, we want to let our supporters know that as we transition from the hunger strike, the whole purpose of it was to uplift the manipulations of the PADOC and take them out of the shadows. The world sees what the PADOC is doing. They have the taxpayers funding make-believe programs as they have been doing successfully for years. The only way to hurt the greedy, corrupt prison industrial system is to defund it and abolish it. If not as a whole, at least starting with the programs whose sole purpose is to destroy the psyches of its prisoners. The DOC's mission statement is to rehabilitate its programs, its prisoners, not break them. And we see that in actuality, the PADOC is designed to break people. We did this 10-day strike and it was a success. We got them to make some concessions like fixing our issues with the showers and the phone calls. The biggest thing is that they have started to allow our fellow members off of the illegal long-term solitary status. We feel that the main reason for this is because they feel that us in population is the lesser of two evils. They are under the false hope that if our own restrictions are lessened, they will stop trying to destroy their system. But they are sadly mistaken. Our sole purpose is to tear down every last brick until every last prisoner is free. Until then, we will never be free. And I just want to say again, right, constantly reading letters. I've read some of the most horrible letters that I've ever read in my life from people who are inside prisons. People who have asked for help, for mental health, support, who just get thrown into a box where they get maybe an hour out of 24 hours a day outside. They start to lose their senses of what the real world is, sitting in an isolated box day after day, year after year, decade after decade. I think if this pandemic has taught us anything while being in isolation, it's taught us that we need people and we need each other. We need our communities. And prisons destroy that connection. They separate us, they isolate us, because they know that our strength is when we're able to organize and be together. And it's so crucial for us to look at prisons not as sites of safety, but as sites of the worst, your worst nightmare imaginable. That's what the state holds when it doesn't want us to do what it wants us to do. It says we have this building that we can send you into for any reason at any point, and it will be your worst living nightmare. That's how they break people and break movements. They've done it to social prisoners, they've done it to political prisoners, they've done it to politicized prisoners. We know that political prisoners like Mamiya and Maroon and Fred Burton and Mutulu Shakur, right, they all have been in prison for the sacrifices that they made for our communities to understand what our human rights are and how we must never remove ourselves from our right to agency and freedom. And telling the state that if we don't like how it operates and we want to change it, we have that right. It's so critical for us in this moment to be empowered, right, by the legacy and the contributions, and to see that the state can never provide us safety. It will give us violence and make us think that that's safety. It will have officers and police going into the communities, shooting people to death, and actually conflating that with safety. That doesn't make sense. It will have no money to fund schools so children can feel empowered and see themselves in their history. And then we'll wonder why young people are completely distraught and confused when they come out of these broken educational systems, when they close down art programs and music programs. It is our duty, as Assata Shakur said, right, to break these chains, to fight every single day. It is our duty, every single breath that we take, for every single person, right, who has been killed directly by the state. It is our duty to fight for them and to fight for our freedom. And it's so important to start at these companies that make millions. They have made careers out of torturing people. They have made careers out of poisoning people. They had made careers out of locking people in boxes and making them insane, and then wondering why we have one of the least safest countries in the world. They'll tell us we need prisons to be safe. We have more prisons than anywhere else, and we have the most violence in the system and in our communities. And it is our job to not let these people eat off of us. So I'm just gonna close here with the chant. What's the call? What's the call? What's the call? What's the call? Thank you.
Next, we have Betsy from Workers' World Party. Yes?
Yes, and mobilization from me also. Yeah. You know, I can't remember what year it was, but do all of us remember Abu Ghraib, the prison in Iraq that made international news because of the torture that the U.S. soldiers who were at that prison were carrying out? Well, it turns out one of the main torturers also got his training at SCI Green in Pennsylvania. He had been a prison guard, Charles Grainer. He had been a prison guard. You know, so it's not surprising that he brought these lessons with him, thinking that's the way you treat other human beings. And, you know, as Sadia before me and Cindy have said, you know, we have to call this out. We really have to put a finger of blame on those corporate CEOs who are the ones benefiting from this. There's a couple of companies that Cindy didn't mention, but I'll mention them, and that's Keefe Group and CSS. Core Civic, excuse me. And if those names are not familiar, I'll tell you a little bit about them. Both of those companies are major companies that make profit, make billions in profit from selling prison beds, from owning stock in prison companies, and then making it available to states, the federal government, and increasingly the ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement Agency. And they have a quota on these beds. So their agreements with these facilities is they have to fill so many beds per hour per day, which means they never want the beds to be empty. So if somebody manages to be released from prison, they'll find somebody else to fill that spot. So Core Civic and Keefe are guaranteed profits for their stockholders. Fortunately, there have been a lot of activists across this country who have also found out that these two corporations are heavily connected with banks like Wells Fargo and other banks that many of us may have accounts at if we can afford it. And what they've done is they put pressure on the funders, on the banks. And as a result, it's shown a lot of spotlight on these two companies, and they've been forced to pull back on the contracts. But they haven't gone away, and we have to keep remembering. I get an email occasionally from Wall Street investment advisor group. I signed up because I just wanted to see what they were telling, their potential investors were the hot stocks to buy. And, they in particular follow Keefe Group and Core Civic. Their stocks go up, their stocks go down, but they haven't gone up. We really need to bring this to international attention. Not only is the U.S. has the most prisoners of any country in the world, any country in the globe per capita, but Pennsylvania is in particular one of the worst of those states that has prisons. It's so bad that the United Nations Commission on Human Rights has an investigation going on Pennsylvania prisons, on the condition in those prisons. And we should make sure that gets out as well. I just want to give a little bit of background. Cindy mentioned smart communications. And what happened was all of a sudden they started claiming that drug abuse substances were coming into the prisons through books and other letters and communications from the incarcerated people there. But every scientist out there who has studied this said, ain't possible. It doesn't work that way. Guards can't get sick from this. And the conclusion that most of the experts drew was the prison guards themselves were the ones bringing the substances into the prisons. And they still are. And you talk to most incarcerated people and they'll confirm that. And yet they managed to get this contract, this $15 million contract. And they're not the only state that's doing it. We've been in touch with some of our members in Massachusetts and Rhode Island who are in similar fights to stop smart communications and these other companies. And I want to just end with one other issue, and it is the question of COVID-19 in the prisons. That for over a year and a half now, we have seen our loved ones inside, our sisters and brothers and siblings, basically in a high state of torture. Sadia described, the conditions where you're not let out of your cell for 23 hours a day. You're in lockdown, you're in isolation, you're not able to be in communication, with other people. And for a while they pulled back on that, and now they're starting to do that again. And what they're doing though is they're mandating that the incarcerated people must get vaccines, or they will be put in these kind of isolated lockdown units. But the problem is it's not our incarcerated sisters and brothers and siblings who are bringing COVID into the prisons. It is the guards and the staff who are bringing COVID into the prisons. And as of the last study that I saw, 70% of them have refused to be vaccinated. But yet there's no mandate, there's no PADOC mandate that the prison guards and the prison staff must be vaccinated. And those are the people who need to be in order to stop the spread of this disease into the prison. We may never know how many incarcerated workers lost their lives in U.S. prisons over the last year and a half from COVID-19. We may never know. We know some stories, we've heard some even from the jail, the Philadelphia jails, the number of people who have died there. But we cannot stop shining a spotlight on this problem, and we really need to make demands, as Saudi has raised, to abolish the prisons, to tear down the walls, because they are not doing anything to resolve issues of so-called crime. They're not imprisoning the biggest criminals, which are the Wall Street bankers and executives, the people who work for Aramark, who own Aramark, not the workers. The owners of Aramark, the CEOs of Aramark, who profit from selling crappy food. These are the thieves. These are the murderers. These are the prisoners that should be locked up. Anybody should be. And that's another demand we have to make. So I'll stop there.
Can you hear me? There we go. All right. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Asantua Nkrumah Toure. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm here representing Black Alliance for Peace, the Philadelphia chapter. I want to shout out to some of my members, Brother Jibu Subukwe, Yane. Thank you all for coming. First, we want to thank the organizers for this very important event, and we thank you very much for this invitation. I am dedicating my remarks today to my big brother, friend, and comrade, former member of the Newark, New Jersey Black Panther Party chapter, co-founder and executive director of Black Agenda Report, Glenn Ford, who recently made his transition from elder to ancestor and was laid to rest earlier this afternoon. May the ancestors receive him warmly. May he rest in power. We will miss him forever. Drawing attention to the Aramark company and the many other prison profiteers is a very important political thing to do. As such companies seek to exploit prison labor and other workers, they are our class enemies and enemies of working class people everywhere. Particular to Aramark, as of 2017, they had a revenue of approximately $14.6 billion. That's B, billion dollars, with over 200,000 employees worldwide. They provide food service, facilities, and uniform services to prisons, hospitals, universities, school districts, sports stadiums, and other businesses around the world. Now, over the years, we've heard a lot of different things about Aramark and some of the controversial issues with that company. Some of those include the average hourly wage for a food service worker is $11 an hour. The average hourly wage for a cashier is $10 per hour. The average hourly wage for a food service supervisor is $14 per hour, etc. Low wages. Some institutions, such as prisons and universities, would rather have a contract with Aramark and pay that company to pay those workers, rather than have such workers be regular staff and then have to pay them a higher rate of pay, guaranteed work hours, benefits including health insurance, and have such regular staff be union employees. So that's why Aramark and these other prison profiteers are a very bad thing. Health and sanitation and racial insensitivity has also been a factor at Aramark. In 2018, Aramark got a low-grade health inspection at a dining hall at NYU, and also in that same year, Aramark staff were disciplined at La Loyola University for serving fried chicken and grape Kool-Aid as a Black History Month special. Boo on Aramark. In 2014, inmates at the Charles Eagler Reception and Guidance Center in Jackson, Michigan found maggots in potatoes they were peeling. Imagine finding maggots in potatoes that you're peeling in a prison. In 2014, 7 prisons in Ohio received health and sanitation contract compliance scores of less than the minimum level of 80%. Aramark has also recently faced international backlash stemming from its ties to an institution called Direct Provision. Direct Provision operates in certain countries in Europe, which is very similar to immigrant detention here in the United States. So, Direct Provision houses asylum seekers and their children while they await relocation. Direct Provision has been widely criticized because it denies residents the right to work, go to school, or cook their own meals. While it is supposed to house asylum seekers temporarily, many families have spent up to 7 years or more in what's called Direct Provision. With this backlash, we've also seen colleges across Ireland to protest Aramark, such as the Union of Students in Ireland, Trinity College, Dublin Student Union, and University College Dublin. And I've been told that that's going on among universities and colleges in other parts of Europe. Aramark has a bad reputation, and they need to go. So my comrades, let me just say that as with any social justice issue, we must do our own research. We must see if Aramark and these other prison profiteers have any ties to the feminist industrial complex, the civil rights industrial complex, the non-profit industrial complex, etc. Does Aramark and such companies have officials that sit on the board of directors of any non-profit organization, or do they sit on the board of trustees of any college or university? So my comrades and friends, again, thank you for this event. We thank you very much for this invitation, and we say let's organize, let's build, let's make this happen. Thank you.
That was excellent. That was wonderful research. Thank you so much. Next, we're going to have Yane's going to make a few announcements. I also have a couple of things that I need to announce. But anyway, here goes Yane.
Hey, so I just wanted to share a couple of things with you. First of all, and I'm sorry that I was late, and if I am redundant in sharing this information, and you know, it's still worth a second share. But today, the 7th of August, is the anniversary of the assassination of Jonathan Jackson. Jonathan Jackson, the younger brother of George Jackson, was murdered on this at 17 years old when in the midst of liberating other individuals who were incarcerated because of their revolutionary realities, their revolutionary truths. We all recognize that all prisoners are prisoners of war, that all prisoners are political prisoners, and Jonathan understood this, and that is why he put his life on the line in order to liberate them, and almost got away with it if it weren't for the fact that there were officers that were in training up the street. Well, I don't know if he would have gotten away with it, but he may have gotten farther at least. But he had the courage at 17 years old to make a very bold move in the efforts to represent the truth of revolution and what a revolutionary culture and revolutionary attitude needs to be. And so we need to remember always Jonathan Jackson. This is the date of August. This is Black August. Black August is a time of remembering and honoring the martyrs of the movement, our political prisoners, and our revolutionaries. And Jonathan Jackson is one of them that has inspired Black August along with his brother George Jackson. The second announcement that I wanted to make is related to that we have an ongoing study actually happening every day that started from the 1st of August, the beginning of Black August, going through to the 20th of August, and then on the 21st will be followed up with a teach-in. And it is a study of the book, Blood in My Eye, written by George Jackson with many words of his brother Jonathan Jackson, and many lessons that are very important to anyone who believes that this is a time for revolution. So I encourage any and everyone to read the book Blood in My Eye, and to also feel free to join us at the ongoing daily reading, studying, discussion, as also we work out every day together. It's virtual, and so you can find it online. It's the Black August Power Hour. You can find it online if you look it up that way, and you can register there, get the Zoom link, and also get a link to the PDF of the book Blood in My Eye, and join us every day from now until the 20th. The last thing that I wanted to announce is that on Monday, August 9th, we will be hosting an event called Impacted Black and Gender Oppressed Day. That is being organized by Mary's Daughter for the Formerly Incarcerated, which is an organization that is run by people who are directly impacted by incarceration. These are people who have lived the exact experiences that we're talking about here today. These are people who have directly felt the consequences of these prison profiteers and their exploitation of our family members. They are leading this organization and the development of this event so that we can learn more and understand better what people are going through. And so I welcome all of you to come and support the event. It will happen in Germantown. It is from 4 to 8 p.m. It will begin at Johnson House, which is at the corner of Germantown Avenue and Washington Lane. And there we will have a panel where you will learn more information about these issues, and then we will march and rally. And we will also enjoy some grub and some music. So please join us. All power to the people. All power to the people, no power to these pigs. I wonder how when pigs are around, because they're always around when we do these things, when they hear these details that maybe they weren't aware of, I just wonder when they hear what it is that the system is doing, that they are standing here with their guns on their hips for, that they are standing here to defend, and wonder how they feel recognizing what it is that they are putting their lives on the line for. They could be putting their lives on the line for something that is just. They could be putting their lives on the line for something that is right and righteous, like Jonathan Jackson did, like George Jackson did. But instead, they put their lives on the line for the very system that hates them and oppresses them and their family members. I wonder how it is that they look at themselves in the mirror after they do this day in and day out. And it is not a place, this is not a place where anybody who is a pig is welcome to get on this microphone. If they don't like what we're talking about, that's on them. We don't like them. We didn't invite them to come here. We don't like what they do, and we don't want to hear what they have to say. Here, thank you very much.
This is staff from the office building where Aramark is, so they might be trying to push people out of here.
One more quick announcement. This demonstration teach-in was sponsored by Food Enough Farms. We serve community in West Philadelphia. We need your donations, please. Number 2, tomorrow is Dr. Matulu Shakur's birthday. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks everybody for coming out. Congratulations to the happy couple.
So it looks like the demonstration here at the Aramark building at 24th and Market in Philly is wrapping up. I guess there's like a wedding right around the corner, so they were like, I don't know. Anyway, so we're going to be taking the stream down here in a second, but thanks everyone for watching. This has been Chris with Unicorn Riot. We're here in Philadelphia, 24th and Market. This is the Aramark building. Aramark is one of several corporations people have been protesting here today for providing overpriced, privatized services to prisoners held by the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections.
Where'd he go? People left.
Yeah, can I just squeeze by you real quick? Sorry. Thanks. Thank you. Yeah, so what we just saw here was a demonstration outside. This is the local headquarters of Aramark. Aramark provides really overpriced, also cheaply made and not nutritious food to prisoners in Pennsylvania prisons and prisons around the country, and at least to some extent internationally. And people here were also calling out other companies like JPay and Securus that provide overpriced video and phone call communications to prisoners. You might have been aware a few years ago Securus got hacked, and it was exposed that they were recording not just all the conversations inmates would have with their families and loved ones, but also privileged lawyer-client communications, and like we're potentially making those available to prison officials or maybe even to prosecutors. So there's a lot of legal issues with these corporations providing privatized services in these prisons. So yeah, the demonstration here is winding up. We're going to go ahead and take the stream down. Thanks everyone for watching. This has been Unicorn Riot live in Philadelphia.